Welcome to our council meeting this afternoon, which is a virtual meeting, and I welcome members of the public who are connecting via YouTube, and hope that you will find our meeting interesting as we go along. Apologies for our absence, which we've already had, and I will invite the monitoring.
Sorry, Chair. Can I just say at this stage, it might be worth just for those streaming and viewing online.
Right.
We've got 27 members in attendance. With apologies from, in alphabetical order, Councillors Chown, Kemp, May, and Pennington. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Darryl. And I will ask our monitoring officer, Mrs. Bowen, if she will give us some introductory comments regarding the meeting this afternoon. Mrs. Bowen, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Members should have received via Mr. White a copy of what I'm just about to say, but I think it'd be helpful for anybody listening on our webcasting if we just went through these procedures quite quickly. When we had our meeting last week, we asked for some feedback, and some of these we picked a lot of those matters up, and just to tighten the meeting up and to ensure that members know what's happening and when. I hope that you find these helpful. I've chopped these up into 4 areas. The first one is housekeeping. Just to remind members to keep our mics muted when not speaking, because we get a lot of background noise, which slows things down a little help enormously with the clarity. If you wish to ask a question or speak during a debate or ask questions, please can you indicate your wish to do so on the instant messaging facility, which you'll see down the left-hand side of your presentation screen. We can see who you are when you've typed it, so you just need to say we're speak, question, debate, so you don't need to put your name, and then the chairman can see who's posted the message and will help her with people if there's a multiple amount of people want to do the questions. Please can members speak when invited to do so by the chair. And we learned from the last meeting that it's probably at the end of our tolerance level. So with the permission of the chairman, the event of the meeting lasting beyond 2 hours, then we should be having a short adjournment for a comfort break at that point. I would remind members, if we do that, to leave your presentations running and not log out and in again, because that might cause a bit of a delay. 4 rules of debate. We had some questions last week, so for the purpose of clarity, following the introduction of the report, members will be asked to ask any questions, and as a reminder, there's no limit on the number of questions that a member can ask at that part of the proceedings. During the questions, the question will be put to the member that has presented the report, but obviously that member may call on officers at any time to give some professional advice and answer questions on their behalf. Once those questions have finished, a motion will be proposed and seconded and then debated. And during that phase of the proceedings, each member has an opportunity to speak once during the debate for a maximum of 5 minutes, and we will be timing this, and we will then chip in at the end of that 5 minutes to let members know if it goes to that limit. The only other time that members may speak during that debate, if they have already spoken, is where you want to move a motion on notice, for example, that the vote might be taken or to raise a point of order. You can speak again if you want to do one of those things, and obviously to move an amendment. At the conclusion of the debate, the proposer has the right of reply. And just a reminder on amendments, when we move those, only one amendment may be moved at any one time. So we'll have the proposal, seconder, questions, debate, and then a decision on that before we can move on to any other amendment. If you want to propose an amendment, please type down that left-hand column in the comments box, amendment, via the instant message, and we'll pick that up. And the chairman will then ask you to propose your amendment. Recorded votes unless members have called for a recorded vote, we won't be minute who has voted in which way. You can have a recorded vote where 5 members request it using the word recorded vote again in the instant messaging facility, and we can pick that up and ensure that happens. For the members of the public, the Democratic Services Office, Mr. White, will read out the names of the first 5 members requesting a recorded vote so that that's transparent. If a member has momentarily lost connection during the vote, Mr. White will check whether or not the member is back online later on when he's taking the votes before declaring that result, to give every opportunity for that member to give their vote. And on points of order, again, as just briefly mentioned above, if you want to raise a point of order during debate, please can you use it using the word point of order via the IM facility, and then the chair again will invite the member to raise the point of order. And speakers will then revert to the order that they were in before the point of order was raised. Many thanks, Chairman.
Well, thank you for that. I hope everybody understood what you said. And the next item on the agenda is item 1 is urgent business. I've got no items of urgent business. Item 3, exempt information. There may be a need to divide the agenda, but this will be addressed at agenda item 15. Item 3, declarations of interest. I invite any members to declare any personal or disclosable pecuniary interest. Any declaration will need to state if the interest is personal or a disclosable pecuniary interest and the nature of such interest. Members, do any of you have any interest which you wish to declare?
Chairman,
No?
Chairman, sorry, can I just check? Obviously, item item 7 relates to housing within South Brent Ward. Obviously, I'm ward member. Just need to check with the monitoring officer. Obviously, I presume I'm okay, but just need to check that that's okay.
Mrs. Bowen, can you reply, please?
Sorry, I was still on mute. Could you actually explain why you think you've got an interest, please, Councillor?
No, I don't think that I've got an interest, but I'm just checking for the just to be sure. That's all. I just because that's all. I probably haven't, but obviously I was just checking. That's all.
Well, from the information you've given me, I would say not, Councillor Smedden.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. So then we move on to item 4, business brought forward by the chairman. And I do have 2 items brought forward, which are from the leader. And Councillor Pearce, would you like to speak with what you have in mind, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Members, it gives me great pleasure, in a way, to announce to you that the government has again allocated £1.6 billion to local authorities in England. And we have heard how much money we have been allocated. Now, you will recall in the last allocation of £1.6 billion, we received £33,962 and were somewhat disappointed. This time, the government has listened to the very good case that the District Councils Network has put to government on our behalf, saying that the first allocation was completely inadequate. So the second allocation, which again has been done on a purely population basis, so it doesn't allow for sparsity or any of the other factors, we have been allocated £866,545. Now, whilst a lot better than the first allocation, we are a little disappointed. I think the only thing that will save the situation, and I can assure you that our situation is not as bad as some councils, but not a happy situation nevertheless. The only thing that is going to save this will be future allocations to local authorities, but we don't yet know how many of those there are likely to be and when they're likely to happen. But I thought you'd like to hear the news that the £866,545 will be most welcome and will keep us out of trouble for a while. I don't know if Mrs. Buckle wants to add anything to that, Chairman, does she? If not, I'll go on to the second part of my announcement.
Mrs. Buckle, do you wish to add anything, please?
No, thank you, Chairman.
Okay, so I will then ask the leader, Councillor Pearce, if she would like to go on to her second item, please.
Thank you. Well, members will recall that at the meeting last week, we passed the remote meetings procedure rules, which allowed for urgent business to be conducted by the council, but only required urgent business. This seems to have generated a lot of heat and light, particularly in the Totnes area, from a few members. But until we had those remote procedure rules in position, we were unable really to plan with any certainty any future meetings. We have, though, therefore, with the consent of the acting chief executive, the executive, which includes the leader of the opposition, and myself, pulled together a list of meetings for essential business to be carried out over, well, until the end of July, I think it's fair to say. Now, I'm going to go through this list of business with you, but I would like you to bear in mind that if the lockdown lifts and if things improve, we will, of course, keep any future meetings after July under constant review. Our real hope is that we should be able to return to the schedule of meetings which has already been set down, but I don't have a crystal ball, you don't have a crystal ball, and none of us know how this thing is going to run its course. So for the moment, you have in front of you a schedule of meetings set out until the end of July. Now, going through them, on the 14th of May, the executive meeting is cancelled, no urgent business. But on the 18th of June, the executive meeting will continue as scheduled, and the essential business to be conducted at that meeting is listed on the screen in front of you. On the 30th of July, we will have a further meeting, which will include the homelessness strategy and budget monitoring, both of which I think you'll understand that budget monitoring will be particularly important. The annual council meeting on the 21st has been cancelled because actually the government regulations cancelled it for us. That is not us cancelling it. Special council meeting that was to have been held on the 25th of June has been moved to the 16th of July so that we have sufficient, well, more business to run the meeting. And you will see the list of essential business to be transacted at that meeting on the right-hand column. Overview and scrutiny will take place on the 4th of June, as scheduled, and it will report on the Council's response to the COVID-19 and the draft strategic recovery plan. There is another meeting penciled in for the 16th of July, but at the moment there is no urgent business to be conducted at that meeting. The two audit meetings will now continue as scheduled because there is essential business that is to be carried out at both those meetings, and you can see that in the right-hand column. Salcombe Harbour Board will continue because I think they have to look at the outturn of their financial position at that meeting, so that is considered essential business. The DM committee, we are cancelling the 13th of May, but reserving the 10th of June and the 8th of July for any business which has to be transacted. But I know that the chairman of DM is doing everything within his powers to bring conciliation on any matters between officer reports and members that are not in agreement, and I thank him very sincerely for that. The Climate Change and Biodiversity Working Group needs to meet, should have met on the 14th of May. That's been moved to the 25th of June to give officers some time to do the work because they've been engaged on other things to do with COVID-19 until now. But that does mean that that business will be able to go to the council meeting as scheduled on the one that's scheduled for the 18th of July. The housing strategy workshops need to happen through June and July, and the dates of those will be arranged because we are still hoping to adopt the housing strategy in September to keep in with the forward plan, and that really is something we badly need in South Hams, as I'm sure you all appreciate. But the actual date of the adoption will be announced in the further programme of meetings which we bring forward, and I want to emphasise that what is brought forward and how it is brought forward will depend on the situation as outlined in the procedure rules. But I do want to assure members that the procedure rules did not mean either that we would not be holding meetings, or that there would not be overview and scrutiny, or that generally it was a dictatorship, as I have seen in some reports. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce, for taking us through that. I'm sure that will be keeping us pretty well occupied for the next few months, and we'll know that we are having proper meetings despite what has been broadcast in some places. And I think Councillor Baldry, he wished to speak. Is that right, Councillor Baldry?
Well, no, only on the fact that it's impossible to read this on the screen. We've had Agenda 5 on one side of the screen. Can we not get the whole schedule on up much larger so we can look at it all at once, please?
I'm not sure that we can actually, but we'll ask Mr. White if he can.
It's a presentation issue, Chair. Unfortunately it's having to straddle two slides to be visible. What the leader has asked is that officers send out this information to all members as soon as this agenda item is concluded. Members.
Okay, so that everybody will be getting it via email shortly. Yes, is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Have I got somebody else who'd like to ask a question or wanted to say something? Councillor Pearce.
Chairman.
Only to say that it has already been emailed. I've just seen it come up on my screen, but I was going to say that.
Very good, thank you. I've got Councillor Abbott, I believe. Councillor Abbott,
Thank you.
Wish to speak?
Yes, thank you. I was interested in the overview and scrutiny meeting, and on the right hand column is essential business, and it suggests report on council's response to COVID-19, and secondly, I know that's it, and draft strategic recovery plan. Is this an exclusive list, or can ONS have a wider remit should it be necessary?
Chairman, I can answer that. It's Mr. Molyneux.
Carry on, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. I've agreed with Councillor Birch that early next week I'll be meeting with Mr. White and Councillor Birch and Councillor Smurden to discuss the what business is brought forward to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. But in our mind, that response to the COVID-19 and the associated recovery plan are going to be quite significant items. So that's why at the moment it's that showing as one item, and we see that as quite urgent business, and the opportunity to get as many of the members as possible involved in those that debate around the recovery plan and what that might look like. Just one other thing, Councillor Chairman. Councillor Panel wished to ask a question, so he was up the screen. And you're on mute, Chairman.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I am. Councillor Panel, please.
Can I go ahead?
Yes, speak now. Go ahead.
Can I ask your discretion on this? I was trying to ask a question of Councillor Pearce on the additional funding, but my conversation bar had disappeared. I wasn't technically able to do so. Is it too late to go back? Can't hear.
If you'd like to go ahead and make yes, as long as it's not too long, fine. Thank you.
No, thank you. It'd be very brief. No, it's just that I noticed that other councils around Devon announced their funding yesterday morning, and I just wondered why we had to wait until today to find out exactly what we'd received. Thank you.
Councillor Pearce, do you have the answer?
I can answer that.
Thank you.
I think some members did find out because they saw it on the internet, but we thought it would be a better idea to announce it at council because these things are normally announced at council.
Thank you for that explanation. Thank you. Does anyone else wish to pass any comments or say anything before we move on to the next item on the agenda, please? No. So we move on to item 5. Item 5 is the 2020-21 Capital Strategy, Treasury Management Strategy. You have the recommendation in front of you on the screens, and Councillor Hilary Bastone, our Deputy Leader, is going to lead on this one. Councillor Bastone.
Thank you, Chairman. If I could move the recommendation firstly. These three strategies are required to be presented annually to Council for approval and set out the Council's capital limits and borrowing limits and where the Council will invest its money on an annual basis. The strategies were due to be presented to both Audit Committee and Council on the 26th of March, and these meetings were cancelled due to COVID-19. Therefore, these strategies are being presented to members at this meeting for approval. Members will recall that Treasury management training for members was arranged for 5th of March, where the key points of the annual strategies were discussed. The capital strategy sets out projected capital plans and the capital financing requirement, which is the measure of the Council's underlying need to borrow for the capital programme, which is a maximum of 34.4 million for 2021. Within the limits and estimates set out within the strategies in this report, there is headroom for renewable energy projects, the Dartmouth Health and Wellbeing Hub and community housing projects. These projects and all the Council's projects within 2021 capital programme will be reviewed in the light of COVID-19 pandemic, and future reports will be brought to members on this in the light of the financial challenges that the Council faces. The strategies set out a position at point in time and are based on the 2021 capital programme approved by Council in February 2020. The strategies can be revised at any point during the year. At 5.3 of this capital strategy, it sets out that the Council is currently undertaking due diligence work on the opportunity for the Council to purchase shares in a special purpose vehicle, SPV. Now, that's not for us to provide a Mercedes for the Section 151 officer. It's officer speak for shares in a company for the purpose of solar, in other words, for a field of solar panels. Anyway, to press on, so the Council is attempting to own, operate or invest in renewable energy generation. The results of this work will be reported back to the Informal Executive to consider. The Council is proposing to continue to invest its money in banks and building societies within the UK, which is set out in the Treasury management strategy. With the recent reduction of the Banking of England base rate to all-time low of 0.1% on the 19th of March, the Council is unlikely to achieve its Treasury management investment budget of £203,000 in 2021. And this will be reported in the next budget monitoring report. And as you see, it was on the list, mentioned in the list of committee and committee meetings coming up. I would like to make a small amendment to the second recommendation, which is that we include the executive and the leader of the opposition when we're making minor amendments to these strategies. And if I could propose that, I'll look for a seconder.
Second.
Thank you. Darryl has had that in advance, and hopefully he'll put that up on the screen, which he has. So yes, that's the introduction, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Members, do you have any questions? I've got Councillor Joseph Rose. Is yours a question? You've asked to speak, but is it a question, please?
It's a comment and a question, if that's all right.
Oh, yeah, ask the question first, please. Okay,
so the question is, in light of the climate change issues and our climate change action plan, and I'm very glad to hear about all of the investments in renewable energy and solar. But however, I'm concerned about the other investments that we are making. Are all of our investments considering climate change and ensuring that our money isn't being put into climate damaging or carbon intensive companies, or for example, if the banks that we're investing in are we sure they're using their money responsibly? Thank you.
Could I refer that one to the Section 151 officers, please?
I'm sure you could, yes.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. That is one of the criteria which we look at when we're looking to place investments, and we can provide a detailed answer to members on that. That the question around investments in terms of the council's or the pension fund, the Devon County Pension Fund, and we have provided written responses on that in the past to members.
The next question I have is from another Councillor Guy Panel, please. Councillor Panel, did you wish to ask a question?
Chairman, I think we've leapt a bit.
Yes,
I've got
yes, Chairman, thank you.
Sorry.
Pardon?
I was just about to say,
do you want me to go ahead or stop?
Got Joe Sweet and also Councillor Hodgson before Councillor Panel.
Okay,
I was actually. Can I just say I was before Councillor Rose?
It doesn't matter. Whoever's speaking next, speak, please. No. I'm sure you're all going to say similar things. So
right,
carry on.
I go?
No, don't repeat what somebody else already says. Thank you.
Just to ask. No, just to ask a question. I appreciate that we have to adopt this policy, and it is no reflection on the any members or officers, but it's a bit like deciding what colour we're going to paint the house when the house has been carried away by a tsunami. In this case, a tsunami of possible debt. I just wondered if you could give me some give us some indication of how much of this capital programme is will be intact at the end of the wreckage, and how relevant that will be. Thank you.
Yes, you make a good point, Councillor Panel, that but this is a good basis. This is a good basis to start from, and obviously, as we go along, we're going to have to modify this tremendously. But we do have already contracts with the waste management, for instance, with the Health and Wellbeing Centre at Dartmouth, and of course we want the affordable housing for the South Hams. We want all that to continue, but obviously when we get down to July, we will have to make some serious modifications going forward.
Thank you very much for explaining that.
For that, the next question, I believe, is Councillor Sweet, please.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Chair. So my question was very similar to Councillor Rose's, so it's been partially answered, but it was specifically, is this council currently investing now in only banks that make environmentally friendly investments, and also to have an update on the pension schemes investments with the same question, that we're only investing in environmentally friendly pension investment schemes. So I'll really welcome Lisa's update, and hopefully that is the case. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, if I could just add to that,
certainly.
As set out within our Treasury Management Strategy, the primary considerations around investments are that around security, liquidity and yield, and therefore our primary considerations are around things like credit rating, and that's set out within the strategy. However, we obviously do look at things like environmental considerations, and we can provide a written response on that. The pension fund from Devon County, it's part of the Brunel Partnership, and they have a statement on their website which covers all of those environmental considerations. So we can put a comprehensive response together for members on that.
Thank you, Mrs. Buckle.
Can I just respond to that? I mean, without a secure environment, nothing actually is secure into the future. So thank you.
Thank you. After Councillor Sweet, I think it's Councillor Brazil, please. Councillor Brazil, are you there?
Yeah, thank you, Rose. Just on, my question is on 6.8.20. It's something that I've gone on about before, and but I'm just going to check before we go into the debate on these recommendations. It says here that when South Hams District Council acquire a commercial investment in line with this strategy, a report will be presented, and then it has in brackets, for noting purposes only, to the subsequent meeting of the executive. Am I right in assuming that they are unable to, that is unable to be called in by overview and scrutiny?
Oh, I'll pass that one to legal, Julian. Thank you.
Is there someone out there who can answer that question, please?
Sorry, Chairman, my thing tuned out a bit. Could the councillor repeat the question, please?
Yes, if you go to, in this particular agenda item, if you go to 6.8.20, it says, when South Hams District Council acquire a commercial investment in line with this strategy, a report will be presented, and then it has in brackets, for noting purposes, to the subsequent meeting of the executive. And what I'm querying is whether that noting process can be called in by overview and scrutiny.
No, if it's for noting, no, because the decision has been taken, and noting means that we're informing members of what has been decided or what action has already been taken. So in that instance, no.
Chairman, could I add that is my understanding also. The governance arrangements are set out in the strategy on page 17 and start at 6.8.14 and state that the decision-making process is that the council would delegate the authority in decision-making relating to commercial investment acquisitions in the South Hams or renewables out of area to the head of paid service, the section 151 officer, in consultation with members of the executive. In the event of 3 or more executive members expressing their opposition to the proposal, then the matter will proceed no further. Any project is subject to due diligence and legal searches, and then the process of delegated authority is required because there is often very little time to secure a bid on a property, especially if it is off market. And then it does go on to say in 6.8.20 that a retrospective report will be taken for noting purposes to a subsequent meeting of the executive. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Baston, do you wish to say something?
Nothing further at the moment.
Right. Okay. The next speaker is, or the next question is from Councillor Jackie Hodgson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed actually an awful lot of the presentation because it just dropped me out. I got stuck. But I just wanted to clarify one question, which is that regarding point 2, is there a ceiling on the delegated authority that could be taken by the S151 officer? Is there a ceiling on the amount that this would involve? It says minor amendments, but I just wonder if there's actually a limit being set or was suggested.
Chairman, I'm happy to answer that question.
Thank you.
The question, if there are minor amendments, those only would be some extra words within the strategy. There would be no changes to any of the figures. And apologies, we should have made that clearer. So it's just where within the strategy we may need a minor amendment to include some extra words. But in terms of the financial limit, there isn't one because we wouldn't envisage delegated authority being used for anything in that respect.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Is there anyone else who wishes to ask any questions? If not, we will move to the debate. And
Chairman, Councillor Rose has asked if he can move an amendment.
Yeah, yes, we're coming to that. So, Councillor Rose, would you like to move your amendment, please?
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask if, well, shall I say the amendment and then see if there's a seconder?
Yes, carry on.
Okay. The amendment I'd like to move is that the environmental issue is added into one of the core conditions, or the core. I'm sorry, I don't have the actual technical language for it, but the the like liquidification and those kind of first things that are looked at is if we can look at environmental responsibility as one of those core pieces. Thank you.
Can I ask, do you have a seconder, please?
Councillor Hodgson has seconded this.
Very good, thank you. Oh yes, I can see that down there.
Perhaps somebody could help me out with the technical term that I was looking for there.
Chairman, could I add, in terms of our counterparties at the moment, we are very restricted with who we can invest with, because at the moment our strategy sets out that we will invest with UK banks and building societies. So our main counterparties are banks and building societies such as Lloyds, Nationwide Building Society. We only have sort of 4 or 5 counterparties that we are able to use at the moment. I wouldn't want to restrict the Treasury management strategy into such a way such that we are unable to use the current banks and building societies within the UK. But I can certainly provide more information on the environmental considerations of those banks and building societies.
Thank you. Well, the amendment's been moved and seconded. Perhaps Mr. White, could you advise us, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. I have it that, in effect, the primary considerations around the Treasury management strategy be added to include environmental responsibilities. So earlier in the debate, Mrs. Buckle touched upon primary considerations to the Treasury management strategy being things like liquidity and yield. The amendment seeks to add environmental responsibilities to those primary considerations.
Right, fine. Is that acceptable to you, Councillor Rose, and your seconder?
Thank you. That is acceptable. And also, if I could speak briefly on the amendment, if that's okay.
Carry on.
I think it's that, actually that the COVID-19 response that we have had to undertake and this country has undertaken, I think is a really excellent kind of example of what an emergency looks like. And the climate change emergency, for which we have actually declared an emergency, is quite a different kind of emergency because it's not so in your face, it's more underlying. However, the worst case of COVID-19 would be a small percentage of the population dying, which is of course very, very dramatic, but the worst cases for climate change is far, far more dramatic than that. So I really feel like we need to be taking it as seriously as we do any other kind of emergency. And one of the few, we actually don't have that many ways we can make an important impact. We've so many officers have put so much work into finding the ways that we can do, but I believe that the most effective way we can make a difference is where we put our money. So, for example, contacting banks and saying, we will only invest our money with you if you are doing X, Y, and Z, or if you're showing environmental responsibility, actually has the impact of creating significant change in this country, which I think is really, really important that we go for that. And if that means we have to look a little bit wider for where we invest our money, and I feel like that's doable. Of course, I don't wish to put any officers in really hard, difficult situation with this. However, we are in a hard, difficult situation, and I think if we don't take that seriously, then we're not doing our bit, and we've pledged to do our bit. So I really hope that we can find ways of making our investments match our ethos, which, as we've declared a climate emergency, is clear. And I really hope that councillors will support me on this, because I don't think it should necessarily cause hardship. It's just that we need to communicate with those we're investing in, and maybe look a little bit wider if we are investing with people who we shouldn't be investing with, because we are putting, money that's been put into our hands to be responsible for on the table. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Councillor Pearce, I think you would like to speak, please.
I would, Madam Chairman. I'd actually like to speak against this amendment because I would like to support the Section 151 officer. We have very few banks we can invest in. If we further hobble ourselves, the rate of interest that banks are giving at the moment is absolutely minimal. And with the current state of local government finances, I'm not sure that Councillor Rose realises the effect that the present emergency has had on our finances. And if we hobble ourselves in any way through our investments, we are just inviting ruin for the council. Now, I have sympathy with what he's saying, but I still don't think that not investing in a bank is the right way of going about it. Actually, to do what the Devon Pension Fund does is a much better way of making a point with a bank. So I would invite everybody who's interested in this to go on the Devon Pensions website and see how their investors Brunel Investment are treating this matter, because they are taking a very, very sensible line on it. But I would really recommend voting against this amendment, because it will not help us with the council finances at all. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you for that, Councillor Pearce. So, where are we now? I've got Councillor Hodgson who wants to speak as the seconder, please, and then Councillor Austin after that. So, Councillor Hodgson, would you like to go ahead?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, there's nothing much more I would add to what Joseph has said, and I think has articulated very eloquently and very fully on this. But I would just add that actually it's in the spirit of what we've said as when we made our declaration. It's in the spirit of what we support with Devon County Council. And as someone who has been actively following the Devon Pension Fund developments, and indeed the fact that they have put on their what they are doing with their investments is actually doing climate monitoring, which is costing them quite a lot. It's costing about 19,000, I think, a year to do carbon footprint monitoring of their investments. So they are looking at this anyway. And I just think we're just future-proofing what we're doing here in South Hams. And I don't think it's anything other than just actually being very prudent and very careful with the investments that we hold on behalf of the public.
Thank you. I've got a request from Councillor Bolger who says, can we see the amendment on the screen, please? And then the reply has come, Hilary, it is in. From Hilary, Councillor Baston says it's in 2B. Darryl, were you going to say something?
I was only going to add, it's actually 1B. If you look at
1B,
halfway down the
right.
screen, we've got now, after the brackets at Appendix
1B.
B, we've got subject to, and that's the two-line amendment there, Chair.
Okay, right, thank you. So
Thank you for that, Rose. Thank you.
I'm going back to Councillor Austin.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I've actually got a lot of sympathies with Councillor Rose in terms of his objectives on the environment. And I think, for example, holding the meeting the way that we're holding it at the moment, where we're actually doing it remotely, and a lot of the meetings that we're planning on doing remotely will be a very much better environmental thing that the council is doing. And I think we're moving towards operating in an environmental way that's a lot better. But I'm going to be voting against this amendment, and the reason why is that I think we're arguing over something that just isn't relevant, because we're not going to have money to invest. If you look at the financial situation that we're in at the moment, we're arguing about how we're going to invest our money. Is just ridiculous to think that we're going to be doing that at all. We're not going to be in a position to pick anywhere to invest any money to begin with. So we're arguing over something that is purely just academic, really, going forward, and it's exactly the wrong kind of direction we need to be taking.
Yep. Thank you for that, Councillor Rose. Yes, sorry, Lisa, carry on.
Chairman, could I add a possible suggestion?
Yes, please.
With regards to the Treasury Management Strategy, we said that our primary consideration is around security, liquidity and yield. But a possible solution is if we were to add the environmental responsibilities as a secondary consideration. So rather than being a primary consideration, it's added in as a secondary consideration, and then that can be looked at as part of our climate change action plan as well.
Thank you. I think we're getting a bit bogged down here, and I think we need to move on fairly soon. Because we've had all the questions, we seem to have got ourselves into the debate, and I've got a couple of more speakers who would like to speak, and I've got Councillor Sweet and Councillor Brazil, and after that I think we'll move on to where we need to be to get this sorted. So Councillor Sweet first, and then Councillor Brazil. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Chair. I really hear the, words from Councillor Pearce and from Councillor Austin about actually, we're in a really potentially, horrific financial position, as are, many other local authorities. We're probably in a better position than some that we've probably all heard from on the news. But actually, what we're voting on is whether, on the Treasury Management Strategy statement. So that's why I would support the motion, because actually that's what we're voting on, not whether we have any money in the council to invest. Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Brazil, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Rose. Yeah, I'll be supporting this amendment. I think it's the way we should be moving forward. Can I just say the two reasons why we've been given by not to support this amendment seem to me reasons why we shouldn't have a problem supporting it. First of all, we were told that interest rates are so incredibly low in all banks. So the fact that we're going to move to a bank that may have a minuscule change in interest rates on a minuscule rate already would hardly make any difference. And secondly, as far as income's concerned, and secondly, if we haven't got any money to invest, why do we worrying about the fact that if we do invest the money that we might not even have, we do it in an environmentally sensible way? So I'm very happy to support it. I've yet to hear an argument why we shouldn't.
Thank you. So I think, Mr. White, can we sort this one out, please, and take a vote on the amendment first, I believe. Is
That's
that
correct. That's correct. Thank you, Chair. So we'll be voting on the amendment, which is on the screens at little 1B. Would you like to read it back, Chair, or are you happy for me to go straight to the vote?
Well, can you read it perhaps for us?
Will do. Thank you, members. It is. So 1B reads, in effect, the Council approves the 2020-21 Treasury Management Strategy as attached at Appendix B, subject to the list of primary considerations being updated to include environmental responsibilities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I appear to have 5 people who want to move to a recorded vote.
Thank you, members. So as per the procedures, we require 5 of them to be in the minutes, and they are in the first 5 as they come through are Councillors Hodgson, Abbott, Rose, Thomas and Panel. So we have the requisite 5 members. So the outcome of this amendment result will be in the published minutes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
So members, in alphabetical order, Councillor Abbott.
So we are voting on the amendment only at this moment.
That is correct, members. Yep. So purely on that amendment. Councillor Abbott.
I vote for.
Councillor Austin.
I vote against.
Councillor Baldry.
For the amendment.
Councillor Bastone.
Against.
Councillor Birch.
For.
Councillor Brazil.
For.
Councillor Brown.
Against.
Councillor Foss.
Against.
Councillor Hawkins.
Against.
Councillor Hodgson.
Sorry, for.
Councillor Holway.
Against.
Councillor Hopwood.
Against.
Councillor Jackson.
For.
Councillor Long.
For.
Councillor McKay.
For.
Councillor O'Callaghan.
For.
Councillor Panel.
For.
Councillor Pearce.
Against.
Councillor Pringle.
Against.
Councillor Reeve.
Against.
Councillor Rose. Sorry, Councillor Joseph Rose.
For.
Councillor Rosemary Rowe.
Against.
Councillor Smurden.
Against.
Councillor Spencer.
Against.
Councillor Sweet.
For.
Councillor Taylor.
Against.
And Councillor Thomas.
For.
Thank you, members. That's therefore 13 votes in favour and 14 votes against with no abstentions, and the amendment is therefore declared lost. Thank you, members.
Thank you. So can we then move to the recommendation, please? Take the vote on that, please.
No, we haven't debated the recommendation.
Oh, you want to debate it, do you? Okay, then carry on if you would wish to debate.
Thank you, Rose. Sorry for butting in like that. I just didn't want to. Suddenly we had the vote.
Well, I thought we'd already debated it, actually.
No.
Hang on, I'm speaking. Thank you. We've been on this item for quite a long time, so can we take the debate if anyone has anything which they wish to debate, and then we'll take the vote on the recommendation. Thank you. So, okay, who's down? I've got no one down to speak as yet. Councillor, sorry, Mr. White, do you have anyone anyone has indicated that they wish to speak as part of the debate?
Councillor Brazil is on the list. Thank you, Chair.
I haven't got a list at all. So, Councillor Brazil, if you would like to speak first, then carry on. Yes, I can see you now. Carry on, Councillor Brazil. Sorry.
Thank you, Rose. Yeah, no worries. Can I say that I don't have any particular problem with the Treasury management, or indeed, so Appendix B and Appendix C, I haven't really got any problem. The problem I do have is with the capital strategy, Appendix A, and particularly in respect of the commercial investments. We've already seen this in this council, a commercial investment in a property in Dartmouth. We're told that the reason why it had to be taken in this view is because it may have been before it was on off market, or there was a particular need to rush through with it. I'm not aware of that. We certainly haven't been made aware of why there appeared to be a particular rush with it, and it concerns me that I wonder if that what we are is we're using this as a way of taking these decisions, which in the end we're talking about, I think it was in the region of about £4 or £5 million that this council decided to invest in a commercial property. Thank goodness we haven't done any more, because goodness knows what the property market's going to be doing. But the return on that investment seemed incredibly small compared to the risk that we were taking. It never came to audit committee. It's never been discussed by audit committee. We had a short paper at the executive as a noting exercise, totally unsatisfactory in my view. And therefore I would say that we need to, and again, I'm not quite sure where the position stands. Obviously we need to have a capital strategy in place by law. So I'm not quite sure where we stand on this, but I would like it that before we agree a capital strategy again, that it comes before the audit committee, so the audit committee can go through it and decide what they feel is the best way for us to progress. I should also add that I think it's ridiculous for us to have a capital strategy in place, which is obviously totally fictional. Now we've had this economic meltdown that's going on because of this wretched virus. So I think it would be rather foolhardy of us to press ahead as if nothing has happened. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brazil. Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Hawkins, are you out there? No?
Maybe tell him to switch his mic on.
If we haven't got Councillor Hawkins, I will ask Councillor Bastow, please.
Hang on, I've come back, sorry.
All right, carry on, we lost you.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. I was trying to, it froze, I apologise. IT and me are not that modern, we don't go together. Can I just, the reason I will be supporting this is because Southampton District Council and West Devon have got fantastic officers looking after us and ensuring that the money that we have got, if we do have any money after the coronavirus problems which we're suffering now, I have total confidence in Lisa and her team, and I know that she's doing an excellent job for us, so we're very, very lucky to have her, and that's why I'll be supporting her.
Thank you. Could I then ask Councillor Bastow, as he wished to respond at some point? Councillor Bastow?
Thank you, Chairman. I think at the time I gave my summary at the beginning, Councillor Brazil must have been unable to get into his Surface Go. But anyway, the comments I wish to make is that with that capital strategy, we are in contract with some providers already. I've talked about the waste contract. We're in contract with them. The Health and Wellbeing Centre at Dartmouth is another example which we're in contract with. And the affordable housing, I don't see how you could vote against not continuing with the affordable housing. And when we get out of this, I would like to see the council making community investment to help the economy locally. As far as Marks and Spencer's is concerned, the purchase price was 4.7 million, and the acquisition cost 329,000, and it's in your report that it cost us 5.029 million, and this was funded by PWLB borrowing, and both the principal and the interest is being repaid over a 50-year lifespan of the asset. The net yield is 1.17%, and that's after repaying the borrowing cost each year, and the net income to the council is 60,000 per annum, and we have a good tenant covenant. Now 60,000 a year is equivalent roughly to 1% on your council tax. The investment doesn't just generate the revenue return for the council, there will also be capital appreciation in the value of the asset over the longer term, which the council will benefit from. And as the council is fully repaying the borrowing costs over 50 years, in 50 years' time, Councillor Brazil may still be here to see it, I won't be, but we will own a property which is worth well in excess of £50 million. I know Councillor Brazil's argument is that at the present time property values will dip, but over 50 years, I don't have a crystal ball, but I would suggest that it will appreciate in some considerable amount.
Could I say, Councillor Barstone, I have a note from Councillor Brazil who says the lease with M&S is only 11 years and not 50.
The borrowing is for 50, yeah, but the lease is for 11 years, which is renewable.
Right, thank you. That's answered that question. I've then got Councillor Baldry who wants a separate vote on capital strategy. He wants it to be voted on in two parts. Perhaps Mrs. Buckle, not Mrs. Buckle, Mrs. Bowen could advise us on this. Is that?
Yes, Chairman, we can take the items instead of en bloc, we can take them individually if that's what the members so wish. But could we clarify whether they want a recorded vote on all of the elements, please?
Councillor Brazil, perhaps you could explain. Not Councillor Brazil, Councillor Baldry. Sorry.
I've not asked for a recorded vote. Has anyone on this one?
No, you've asked for a separate vote on capital strategy, please.
What I am asking for is a vote on A and then taking the rest en bloc.
You want one A and then one B, C and 2 together?
Yes.
Okay, right. And do you want it recorded or not?
No, I don't.
Fine. Okay, that's fine then. Okay.
I don't.
Okay, Mr. White, could you advise us on this one, please? Can we do that?
Thank you, Chair. So the wish of the meeting is that we have a separate vote on recommendation 1A, which is to approve the 2020-21 capital strategy. So on that part of the recommendation, members, Councillor Abbott.
I vote for.
Councillor Austin.
For.
Councillor Baldry.
Abstain.
Councillor Bastone.
For.
Councillor Birch.
Abstain.
Councillor Brazil.
Against.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Foss.
For. Sorry, didn't turn the mic on.
Councillor Hawkins.
Support.
Councillor Hodgson.
Against.
Councillor Holway.
For.
Councillor Hopwood.
For.
Councillor Jackson.
Against.
Councillor Long.
Against.
Councillor McKay.
Abstain.
Councillor O'Callaghan.
Against.
Councillor Pannell.
Abstain.
Councillor Pearce.
For.
Councillor Pringle.
For.
Councillor Reeve.
For.
Councillor Joseph Rose.
Against.
Councillor Rosemary Rowe.
For.
Councillor Smurden.
For.
Councillor Spencer.
For.
Councillor Sweets.
Abstain.
Councillor Taylor.
For.
And Councillor Thomas.
Against.
Thank you, members. That is therefore 15 votes in favour with 7 against and 2 abstentions, and recommendation 1A is therefore declared carried. Thank you, members.
Thank you. Can we move on to 1A, B and C and also 2 then, please, and take the vote on that? Thank you, Mr. White.
Thank you, members. So on the recommendation 1B, 1C and 2 on block, members. So just getting the right sheet of paper. In alphabetical order again, Councillor Abbott.
Abstain.
Councillor Austin.
For.
Councillor Baldry.
For. Who whispered abstain in the background? For.
Councillor Bastone.
For.
Councillor Birch.
For.
Councillor Brazil.
For.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Foss.
For.
Councillor Hawkins.
For.
Councillor Hodgson.
For.
Councillor Holway.
For.
Councillor Hopwood.
For.
Councillor Jackson.
For.
Councillor Long.
For.
Councillor McKay.
For.
Councillor O'Callaghan.
For.
Councillor Pannell.
For.
Councillor Pearce.
For.
Councillor Pennington. Oh, so you wait. Councillor Pringle.
For.
Councillor Reeve.
For.
Councillor Joseph Rose.
For.
Councillor Rosemary Rowe. Councillor Rowe.
Sorry, I was switched off. Yes, for.
Councillor Smurden.
For.
Councillor Spencer.
For.
Councillor Sweet.
For.
Councillor Taylor.
For.
And Councillor Thomas.
For.
Thank you, members. That is therefore 26 votes in favour with 1 abstention. Thank you, members.
Thank you for that. So we'll then move on to item number 6, which is notes arising from the informal executive meeting, which was held on the 19th of March, and Councillor Judy Pearce is going to introduce these notes and page by page.
Sorry, Chair, it's Mr. White. Just to interject, there's some querying about the vote for recommendation 1A.
Oh, right.
If I can just reiterate, it was 15 votes in favour with 7 against and 5 abstentions. So 15-7-5. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So can I then move on to item 6?
Sorry to interrupt you, Chairman, but could we just reiterate the rules about the dialogue down in the IM box? It's very difficult to pick out with a lot of the dialogue whether somebody wants to speak or put a point of order or so on and so forth. If we could restrict it to absolutely necessary comments, please.
Yeah, yes, Mrs. Bowen, I did see there are a couple of remarks put in there which definitely do not belong in there, and they are either just if you want to speak or whatever. That's all that should be in there, as has been pointed out. Thank you. So I'm now going to move on to item 6, which is notes from the informal executive meeting, which was held on the 19th of March. And Councillor Judy Pearce is going to lead on this one, and she's going to introduce the notes page by page and deal with each recommendations one by one. Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairman. I present the notes from a meeting of the informal executive held via Skype on Thursday, the 19th of March. And I will go through page by page. If anybody wants to raise anything, please put something in the IM box. Page 59, page 60. On page 60, there is a recommendation to Council regarding the council tax reduction for care leavers and council tax premium for long-term empty properties. You have the recommendations in front of you. Mr. White, do you want me to read out all the recommendations, or are we just going to take it? Are we going to ask if anybody objects, or how are we going to handle this?
In terms of reading out the recommendations, I mean, they're across 2 slides, Leader. So I mean, it's entirely your call. I mean, that's the first slide, followed by the second slide. I mean, they've been published with the informal exec notes, and of course they are up for, sort of questions, proposals, seconded. So they are necessitating a decision today, but it's just a case of whether the meeting wants you to repeat them back again. But they are over those 2 slides, Chair.
Thank you. Well, I won't read them out. But is everybody in favour and is anybody against?
All those in favour, if anyone's wishes is not in favour, can they please say so? Okay, if you'd like to go on, move on, Councillor
Thank you.
Pierce.
Okay, well, I'll move on down the rest of page 61 and on to page 62, the parking permit review. Now, you have the wording in front of you, and originally what we decided at the meeting was at number 4 is that the further 21-day public consultation should be undertaken following the council meeting, that is now. We feel actually it's far more sensible now, because lots of things have happened since we had that informal meeting, that this 21-day consultation should not be undertaken before the council has restored its parking charges at its car parks. That's the proposition, Madam Chairman. Now, does anybody want to ask any questions on that one?
I believe Councillor Birch, do you wish to ask a question on this?
Yes, it was my understanding that, as it states in the recommendation, that the proposed parking permit review be deferred at least until the autumn, i.e. not before the 1st September. And it was my understanding that following that date, there would then be a council meeting to determine the permit charges and permits, and that after that it would be subject to consultation. In other words, we were talking about a consultation after our autumn meeting, and what Councillor Pierce now seems to be suggesting that it was consultation after this meeting. That's not my understanding.
Madam Chairman, if I may come back.
Yes, you can.
I am presenting these minutes, but this was not my agenda item. So could I pass it over to Councillor Baldry to answer that question, please?
You can do, certainly, because he has asked to speak. Councillor Baldry.
Yeah, Councillor Birch is not actually correct. What we are now saying is that there has already been a consultation with parish and town councils, and the list was circulated. The thing on the screen says I'm too close to the mic, but you can all hear me, I take it. Yes. The consultation with town and parish councils was circulated to all members. We know the town and parish councils who took the trouble to reply, and we have taken account of their comments when we had the informal review, executive meeting on the 19th of March. But included in the recommendations is that there will be a 21-day consultation following the council meeting, which is this meeting. But we have said we will postpone that consultation with the public until we get back to, in quotes, normal and start charging in our car parks, because one of the places where we ask people for comments is with notices in the car parks. I can assure members that we will take full account of whatever the public and businesses and others say in that consultation. And depending on what is said then, we will then come back to the executive with comments on what has been said in the review. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baldry. Does anyone else wish to add to the questions before? I've got Councillor Birch, you've asked to speak, but you've already spoken once, but I will allow you to speak again. Carry on.
So just to clarify then, there will still be a public consultation, and that this public consultation will take place as and when the situation arises that such a consultation can take place. Is that correct? The other point I would make is that the previous, in my view, and this is a view, that the previous public consultation was insufficient, but that's neither here nor there. But it would be helpful if Councillor Baldry can confirm that, in fact, there will be a public consultation sometime in the future when it's possible.
Yeah, as stated in the resolution, paragraph 4, there will be a further 21-day consultation. That is not going to start after this council meeting. That will start when our car parks go back to normal business. I confirm what Councillor Birch says is correct.
Thank you. Thank you. I've got Denise. So Councillor Callaghan, you're down to speak. Would you like to speak, please?
Yes, I've got the mic on now. Thanks, Chair. Yes, it's just to say that it may well be the case that town and parish councils may have had more comments from the public about the permit scheme since the previous consultation, which is now becoming quite a while away. So I don't see why it looks like they've been excluded from this 21-day consultation, which is now being looked at. And I would like to think that they could bring forward further comments in the light of, changes that may have happened and further comments that they may have had from residents in their towns and parishes.
Thank you. If you read the last paragraph, that might explain it to you, but I will ask Councillor Pearce or Councillor Baldry to respond to this one.
I defer to Councillor Baldry on this.
Right, Councillor Baldry, please.
Look, members may be unused to genuine consultations. Let me tell you, this will be a genuine consultation. We will take account of what anyone says. We will take account of residents. We will take account of businesses. And if those, although we did have a response from Kingsbridge Town Council, if they want to update that and change that further, yes, we will listen to it. And we will not take the final implementation until all the consultation points have been considered.
Thanks, Keith.
Thank you. So therefore,
Chairman, as my microphone's open, Councillor Panel is trying to raise a point of order.
Okay, Councillor Panel. Councillor Panel, are you out there? Councillor Pringle.
No. Just switching on. Yeah. I'm sorry. There's a point of order at the end of the last business, which I did put. Yeah, no, it was just to clarify your comments about the extraneous comments in the conversation panel. I quite understand that we don't want things being said that aren't relevant. I just wanted to check you weren't referring to the our comments about the vote, because I think that is important, that if we feel a vote has been miscounted or misannounced, we need to be able to raise that. Am I correct in presuming that you don't mean that?
Mrs. Bowen, perhaps you could answer that one?
Yes, that is a necessary comment, Councillor Panel. So yes, if we think that something has happened out of order, that is absolutely fine. I'm on about the sort of dialogues that go on around that. It makes it very difficult as to follow when a member does want to speak in about what. So that would be in order. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Quite understand. Thank you very much. I think Darryl just announced the vote there. Thank you.
So, Councillor Panel, are you questioning the vote?
No, not as Darryl amended. That's fine, thank you.
Right, fine, thank you. So can we take the vote then on item 6, this recommendation to the council that reference to car parking, please?
Thank you, Chair. So as per the screens, it has been proposed and seconded in alphabetical order again. Councillor Abbott.
4.
Councillor Austin.
4.
Councillor Baldry.
4.
Councillor Bastone.
4.
Councillor Birch.
4.
Councillor Brazil.
4.
Councillor Brown.
4.
Councillor Foss.
4.
Councillor Hawkins.
4.
Councillor Hodgson.
4.
Councillor Holway.
4.
Councillor Hopwood.
4.
Councillor Jackson.
4.
Councillor Long. Councillor Long. I'll come back to Councillor Long. Councillor McKay.
4.
Councillor O'Callaghan.
4.
Councillor Panel.
4.
Councillor Pearce.
4.
Councillor Pringle.
4.
Councillor Reeve.
4.
Councillor Rose.
4.
Councillor Rosemary Rowe.
4.
Councillor Smurden.
4.
Councillor Spencer.
4.
Councillor Sweet.
4.
Councillor Taylor.
4.
And Councillor Thomas.
4.
And just a final check, Councillor Long. Is Councillor Long back on the call?
Yes, 4.
Thank you very much. That therefore, members, is 27 and unanimous in favour of the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. Thank you. Councillor Pearce, would you like to continue?
Certainly, Madam Chairman, I will. So if you go to the bottom of page 62 into the top of page 63, there is a recommendation to Council regarding the statement of community involvement. And we resolved that as executive and are asking you to endorse that the statement of community involvement is formally adopted under section 23 of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act. Now, Mr. White, do we want to have a vote, a one-by-one vote for this? Because if we do, we better go back to the other ones that we didn't all vote for. But if this is not controversial, do we need to have a vote name by name?
Thank you, Leader. I think the Chairman's approval. If there's no comments or issues raised, or I think we can take this one by exception. Thank you, Leader.
Yes, that's quite okay. If everybody is in favour, then we don't need to do vote name by name. Is everyone happy about that?
Councillor Brazil has put something in the box at the bottom.
Well, he says I don't, but he had that in there a little while ago.
Okay, fine. All right, so we'll take that everybody approves unless they shout now.
Exactly,
fine.
Yes.
Thank you. Well,
So
I'll
that's
move on
approved.
to the next paragraph. Now, this regards Pollerton House and this strategic accommodation review. I think I'd like to pass over to Councillor Hopwood for this because she is chairman. She is the chairman at the moment of the accommodation working group.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think looking at this strategy, I don't think at the moment we should be approving this. I think at the time this recommendation to Council was done, we were in a position to approve moving forward. However, I think in light of the COVID-19 outbreak, I think we should put this on hold. I don't have a timeline as how long to put it on hold for, but I definitely don't think it should be going forward at the moment.
Seconded.
Thank you. That's fine. Councillor Bastone has seconded. Does anyone else wish to add to? I've got some people wishing to speak, but I'm not sure. Councillor Hodgson, you said you want to speak on item 6, and we're only on item 5 at present. No, item 6. What did you wish to speak on,
Chairman? Can I interrupt? I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I did completely forget to mention that that doesn't include the bit about the Arboretum.
Right, okay, fine.
Sorry, I would like that to still go ahead.
Oh yes, there's a bit.
Beg your pardon.
Down. So do we need to split it in two, or not quite sure?
That I think that will probably depend on the nature of the debate, Chairman.
Okay, right. So I've got Councillor Hodgson, who I believe you would wish to speak on this item. Yes.
Well, actually, I was trying to speak on the previous item. I just couldn't type quick enough to get past the conversation going on. I actually wanted to speak on the community engagement policy.
Right. Well, we finished with that one then. The vote's been taken on that.
Okay, so, but I just like it recorded that I don't agree with it. Okay.
Okay, right, fine. So you don't want to speak on this item then? Pollerton House strategy, accommodation review. Is that right, Councillor Hodgson? No?
Yes, thank you.
Fine. Okay, then. So then I have got Councillor Birch who wishes to speak. Is that right? Councillor Birch, do you wish to speak?
Yes, please.
Carry on.
Can I first of all say that I'm grateful that, I'm happy that item 3 remains as a recommendation to this council, and I'll certainly be supporting that. I'm concerned that what we're being asked to do is to reject 1 and 2 at the moment, bearing in mind that this is a recommendation from the executive. What I would like to propose, rather than reject items 1 and 2, in fact, the decision at 1 and 2 be deferred until the council's future financial position is determined at a subsequent meeting of the executive and council. In other words, my concern is this, is that if his decision is being taken to what is effectively reject a proposal, then I'm not too certain as to how that stands as far as the Constitution is concerned. I think it would be far better and safer for this council to defer a decision on 1 and 2 rather than reject it, bearing in mind that I understand, and I'm talking about item 2 concerning the proposed wedding venue. I have it on reasonable authority that all weddings this year are being postponed, and that next year is going to be a bumpy year for weddings. And I think that's possibly that the proposal there would actually give the council a much needed financial income, and I don't think we should be closing off our options. So I would like to propose that items 1 and 2 be deferred rather than rejected.
Thank you, Councillor Birch. I have think that some of that was what Councillor Hotwood was proposing. However, I don't think we'd have the place ready as we had maybe in mind to hold weddings there even next year. It will take much longer than that to get the new accommodation sorted, even if we go ahead with it. But the next, Councillor Hotwood, did you wish to come back at that one?
Yes, I did, Chairman. That's exactly what I did say. I have no wish to shelve this completely. I thought I made it quite clear that I wanted to put it on hold.
That's exactly what I thought you said. Thank you.
I did. Thank you.
I've got somebody else who wanted to speak. I think it might be Councillor Joe Sweet. Councillor Sweet, did you wish to speak?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just pressing buttons and whatnot. Thank you. Yeah, as ward member, I'm sort of very passionate about Follerton House and the informal garden and the arboretum. So I wasn't totally clear that Councillor Hotwood was proposing to just put on hold items 1 or 2. So that's really great to have that clarification. But I was, really looking forward to, starting to sort of feed into this whole, all the sort of proposals and the discussions around all the different areas of Follerton, because, I really feel that overall that the success of the wedding venue, when and if it does go ahead, I don't really see that there is separation. I think that the success of that is actually dependent on the success of the arboretum. So, at the point when it is taken forward, I'd really like to start looking at it as a holistic thing, because I don't feel that comfortable with this kind of segregation between the formal area and the public area. I think that there's so many ways that they can intertwine and work really successfully together. And, it is one of our assets, and, we are going to need to look after our assets at the time when the finances allow us to do so. And yeah, bumpy year for weddings next year, John. That's great to hear. I'm not quite sure how it's going to translate, but thank you. I just needed to voice my opinion. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hotwood, did you wish to come back at that? I've got you as speak, please.
No, Chairman, you asked me to. I will come back at the end of the debate.
At the end, right? Okay. Yes. Then I've got Councillor Panel.
Madam Chairman, you've missed Councillor Brazil was next, and then Councillor Pearce.
Oh right, I thought that was from the last item. Okay, well I'll go back then to Councillor Brazil and then Councillor Pearce. Sorry, Councillor Brazil.
Thank you, Rose. First of all, I do find it slightly ironic that Councillor Hotwood was quite happy to pass a capital strategy that was spending up to £75 million of council taxpayers' money on various projects, but when it comes to spending a possible £30,000 and it's only being considered for a wedding venue, she balks at that and says that we should wait and hold on. I just thought I'd highlight that. The point I really wanted to make was on item 3. That's great news about £25,000 for the Arboretum, but I wonder if I don't know when maybe we are looking at it, but just in the same way that Kingsbridge in Bloom does a fantastic job in cooperation with the district council in in our parks and public areas in Kingsbridge. I wonder if Totnes might be asked if they would like to become, and members of the community in Totnes become involved in volunteering in keeping the Arboretum up to scratch, because I just think it's an excellent way where the community and the council can work together in cooperation and create a lovely space. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think Councillor Brazil's idea is absolutely cracking. That's the first thing. The second thing was that, yes, I was coming in just to say that 1 and 2 are being held over for a review. We're not cancelling them, they're just being held over for a review to see whether there might be better options and wait until the situation clarifies on the emergency we're in at the moment. That's all, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Could I ask you, Steve, I'm a little lost here. Could you ask me where I should be next? Who's the next speaker?
So what you had was Councillor Birch making an amendment that was being seconded by Councillor Pannell, but I'm going to ask Councillor Birch to clarify, following Councillor Hotwood's comments, whether he's happy to withdraw that amendment first, if that's okay.
Right.
So, Councillor Birch, can we?
Yes, I'm sorry. When I spoke, I didn't realise what was being proposed because it's so small on my screen. I've just seen the recommendation in respect of item 1 and 2, and that being the case, I don't wish to pursue my amendment. I'm happy with 1 and 2 on the understanding that 3 is also included in the original as it was worded on the paper.
Thank you. And I believe you had a seconder, was that right?
And yeah, Councillor Pannell's confirmed that that's okay with him as well.
That's correct. So
there's only one speaker left, Madam Chairman, and that's Councillor Sweets has to speak again.
Okay, fine. Councillor Sweet then, please.
Hi, I just wanted to add that some of the sort of work and sort of research I've been doing is about, including a lot more volunteers and having some kind of like managed volunteer organisation that can sort of overview and work on the whole project, throughout those 3 assets, which I think are being looked at separately at the moment. And I think they need to. It'll be the full involvement in volunteers throughout the whole project, which will really sort of lead to its success. So I'll be sending on some notes on that.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Councillor Hotwood, would you like to come back?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I would. Thank you, Councillor Birch, for withdrawing your amendment, and I can completely understand why you couldn't read it on the screen, so thank you for that. Councillor Sweet, I believe that all members are passionate about Follerton House. The building is a listed building, and we have a duty of care to it as members. And I think that through this strategy, that definitely the old house will be brought back in some shape or form into how it should be looked after. Councillor Brazil, the capital strategy, I voted yes, I did vote for that. There were items on that though that were already on their way, so they were going to happen anyway. This is in no way wanting to stop the work of the accommodation group. We do need to review it, but we need to just put it on hold just for a bit, and we are all learning to work in different ways. It may well be that we don't need as much accommodation as we first thought we did need at Follerton House. We may be able to work in less floor space than we do now. I don't know. The Arboretum, we are looking for match funding in the Arboretum, and we are definitely wanting the input of local groups in the Arboretum. I believe there are some local groups that either did used to work up there or work up there now and have small plots that they tend, and that I think is really important to the success of the Arboretum, that those volunteers continue to work up there. And it's certainly, when we get to that point, we will be looking to see how we can involve obviously the local community, because it's local to Woolwell, and looking at how Woolwell, I wish it's local to Totnes, so we'll be looking at how we can involve them in it. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that. So can we now move to the vote for that recommendation, please, Mr. White?
Madam Chairman, can I just make a point of
Yes,
clarification,
sure.
please? Just wanted to clarify Councillor Brazil's comments, where he was suggesting that that we'd previously voted to spend 75 million. I should just stress that that's not a commit. The capital strategy is not a commitment to spend it. It's a borrowing limit. So it's actually a borrowing limit that we've approved. So I just wanted to clarify that for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Mr. Molyneux. Okay, so Mr. White, can we now?
Thank you very much, Chair. So
vote,
for the
please.
recommendation, members, in alphabetical order: Councillor Abbott.
4.
Councillor Austin.
4.
Councillor Baldry.
4, but note my comment at the foot of the recommendation.
Councillor Bathstone.
4.
Councillor Birch.
4.
Councillor Brazil.
4.
Councillor Brown.
4.
Councillor Foss.
4.
Councillor Hawkins.
4.
Councillor Hodgson.
4.
Councillor Holway.
4.
Councillor Hopwood.
4.
Councillor Jackson.
4.
Councillor Long.
4.
Councillor McKay.
4.
Councillor O'Callaghan.
4.
Councillor Pannell.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce.
4.
Councillor Pringle.
4.
Councillor Reeve.
4.
Councillor Joseph Rose.
4.
Councillor Rosemary Rowe.
4.
Councillor Smurden.
4.
Councillor Spencer.
4.
Councillor Sweet.
4.
Councillor Taylor.
4.
And Councillor Thomas.
4.
Thank you, members. That motion is therefore declared carried by unanimous vote. Thank you, members.
Thank you. So now could Councillor Pearce move on to the next part, which is implementing new recycling service, I believe.
Yes, Madam Chairman, you'll be pleased to hear that I think this is the last recommendation in this item. And I'm going to pass over to Councillor Baldry for this, because this in fact lies in his portfolio. I think he wants to speak to it.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Baldry.
Well, just to say, hasn't life moved on rapidly? This was all agreed on the 19th of March, and since then people have gone into lockdown. Some of our suppliers for the new depot are not producing the goods, and the people who are making the new vehicles are an Irish company, Republic of Ireland, and they have gone into going to be in lockdown for at least 5 weeks. So this is an historic document. I think all of it will almost certainly change, but we will keep members informed of any changes as they occur.
Thank you for that. Have I got anyone who wishes to speak on this item, please?
Madam Chairman, Councillor Hodgson would like to speak.
Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm just a bit concerned about these additional costs, and I just wonder, I mean, it may be a bit historic, but I mean, when we actually looked at the tenders that came forward a couple of years ago now, and as Councillor Baldry has just said, the Irish group are putting back the development of the vehicles, but we seem to have had quite a lot more costings loaded onto us when in fact we've commissioned the service. And I just wonder, at what point do we actually say enough is enough, or do we actually have some limits set out that we would be sticking to in terms of, you know, because I just feel that there's quite a lot of money being asked for here. It may well be that we're just putting it on hold, and maybe that's the situation, what we should need to do, but I don't think we are probably going to do that. And I do feel that it's quite a lot of money. It's 50, you know, sort of this best part of 80 or 90,000 there, in addition to what we've already sort of said that we're going to spend on these vehicles coming out. So it's a question really. Is there a limit? And I'm very concerned about this.
I will ask either Mrs. Savage or Mrs. Buckle to speak on that, but the figures are very elastic at the moment, but the biggest increase is in the cost at the Ivy Bridge depot, and construction costs are the ones which are going up. But if either Mrs. Savage or Mrs. Buckle want to speak, that would be useful.
Okay, it's Mrs. Savage here. So the costs are... Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, carry on. Thank you.
Thank you. The costs are to do with, you're quite right, the costs are to do with the construction of the depot, which is our depot. They always were our costs, so it's our costs. The vehicles, which are our vehicles, so that again is our cost, and the containers, which is our cost. So none of these costs would have fallen to the contractor anyway. Had we kept the service in-house, these costs would have increased exactly the same way. Does that help?
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Does that help? Fine. Thank you very much. I don't appear to have any other speakers, so could we take the vote on this, please?
Chairman, we need somebody to move and second this one, please.
Okay. I move.
And
I'll
a second. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay, Darryl, could you?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Abbott.
4.
Councillor Austin.
4.
Councillor Baldry.
4.
Councillor Bastone.
4.
Councillor Birch.
4.
Councillor Brazil.
4.
Councillor Brown.
4.
Councillor Foss. Councillor Foss.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Hawkins.
4.
Councillor Hodgson.
4.
Councillor Holway.
4.
Councillor Hopwood.
4.
Councillor Jackson.
4.
Councillor Long.
4.
Thank you. Councillor McKay. Councillor O'Callaghan.
4.
Councillor Pannell.
4.
Councillor Pearce.
4.
Councillor Pringle.
4.
Councillor Reeve. Councillor Reeve. Come back. Councillor Joseph Rose.
4.
Councillor Rosemary Rowe.
4.
Councillor Smurden.
4.
Councillor Spencer.
4.
Councillor Sweet.
4.
Councillor Taylor.
4.
Councillor Thomas.
4.
And just in case, back on the line, Councillor Reeve.
4.
Thank you very much. Thank you, members. That is therefore unanimous in favour of the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. I'm conscious of the time, members, and if we're going to have a break, because I think we're going to run far past 4 o'clock. So we'll do item number 7, which is release of community housing grant, community housing project, and the leader is going to introduce this one. So Councillor Pearce, we seem to be putting a lot on you this afternoon, but
well, it's luck of the draw because this actually falls in my portfolio. That's why, Madam Chair.
Right, carry on.
Okay. Right. So the proposal before you has 2 components. Firstly, a recommendation that the council approves a secured loan to South Brent Community Land Trust for up to £360,000. And secondly, a proposal for the approval of £100,000 from the Affordable Housing Capital Programme budget. Madam Chair, can I ask anybody who isn't speaking to turn their microphone off so we don't get all the background noise? Thank you.
Surely, yes.
These are flagship projects of our community housing strategy to facilitate the delivery of community housing projects across the South Hams, where the cost of housing, both to buy and rent, is out of reach of many local people. The programme is bringing forward a genuinely affordable housing to buy or rent, offered for sale between 55 and 65 of the market value, and rents capped at local housing, LHA rents, that's local housing authority rents. The programme is now focused on funding and the design and planning stages of community housing development projects. Costs are reimbursable upon completion of a scheme, such as the fund finances, so that the fund finances revolve over time. The programme is no longer making grants towards awards to cover the capital cost of building a house. All the funding from these projects, other than the proposals in this report and those that have already been granted, will be by borrowing from the Public Works Loan Board. The costs of this have been factored into the building costs, and therefore there are no further charges on the Council's finances. Taking each of the proposals contained in this report in turn, the South Brent CLT loan. South Brent Community Land Trust is a highly active group of individuals and families from South Brent who've been trying to progress a self-build housing project in the village for about 7 years. SHDC became involved to facilitate the project through funding the design and planning process with the support of the Community Land Trust. The project of 12 affordable houses and 5 open market houses to cross-subsidise the affordable element is within the Dartmoor National Park Planning Authority. The CLT have had to lower their self-build aspirations due to complexity and risk, but instead the scheme has been designed to a custom-build scheme with the CLT remaining involved in the design process. The project has been designed to meeting close to passive house environmental standards. The project is benefiting from a £400,000 infrastructure grant award from Homes England, which has been secured by SHDC. To enable the South Brent CLT to fund the construction of the 12 affordable units, they've lined up borrowing through Ecology Building Society. However, Ecology, similar to any lender of a construction project, require the CLT to make a contribution of 20% of the cost, i.e. an 80% loan to value percentage cap. As a community group, the CLT have insufficient funding available to meet this 20%, necessitating funding from another source. The report explains the details of how this will be funded and how it will be repaid. But importantly, again, the loan will not impact on financing the Council's frontline services. At St Anne's Chapel, the community housing scheme for 13 houses will deliver 8 affordable units, 8 open market units for sale, and the transfer of 2 plots to the landowner. Planning consent has already been granted. The outcome of a tender process by SHDC shows a gap between estimated construction costs and actual build costs, which has presented a funding challenge. The St Anne's Chapel project is benefiting from the allocation of Section 106 monies amounting to £162,893. In spite of this, the support there is still a funding. In spite of this support, there's still a funding gap of £100,000. In aggregate, this funding represents a financial support of £32,875 per affordable unit. The commitment of £100,000 from the Affordable Housing Capital Budget would leave an uncommitted balance in the Affordable Housing Capital Budget of around £565,000. I recommend approval of the proposal before Council, which will enable the construction to commence this summer with completion early next year. And we know that there are families waiting for this housing. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I can now take any questions, and then I'll move the recommendations formally after the questions, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. I've got quite a few comments in the question box which do not relate at all to what should be there, which Mrs. Bowen did point out earlier on in the meeting at the very beginning. Please, could people who want to speak just put speak please or whatever, and not pictures and various other bits and pieces which are in there. I've got.
Yes. Can I firstly
I haven't asked you to speak yet, but carry on.
Right.
Carry on, Councillor Smurden.
Right. Sorry. Apologise for my somewhat flippant remark. I didn't realise. In order to prepare properly for this, I'm using the headphone and the microphone, and unfortunately, I must have put the microphone too close to my nose rather than my mouth. Anyway, on
you could have switched the microphone off first before you blew your nose, if that was the problem.
No,
and other people have added to it, which makes it quite difficult to follow. So carry on. If you wish to speak now, speak.
Yes, I would like to. Well, I'd like to just to second when well, Councillor Pearce hasn't actually proposed it anyway. I'm happy to second it, but to explain that I've personally been working with South Brent Community Land Trust for about 8 years. This is a long-term project. 4 years on a site previously, which they lost, and then another 4 years on this site. It's within Dartmoor National Park. This site is approved by the park, and it's in their local plan.
Councillor Smurden, I think we're meant to be having questions at this point in time.
Right.
Have you any questions, or you're just supporting what's proposed?
I'm giving information, so I think
information.
It's probably better that I keep quiet.
Well, unless any members got questions they'd like to ask, or does anyone wish to ask a question? I don't have.
We've got Councillor Pannell and Councillor Taylor, Chairman.
Are they asking questions?
I am assuming so, since they've said to speak when we said, can we...
I suspect they want to speak because they're both local members, Mrs. Bowen.
Correct.
I will speak after you finish.
Yes. Right, well, move the recommendations, Madam Chairman, then they can get on with it, can't they?
Yes, yeah.
All
If you
right,
move
so
the
recommendations, do I have a seconder?
Councillor Smurden will second it, I believe.
Yes.
And would you now like to speak then, Councillor Smurden, where you left off? And then I will ask.
Right.
Carry on.
Absolutely.
But don't make it too long.
Absolutely. Can I just check the volume? Yeah. Right. They're telling me that I might be close to the microphone. I can't get it any further away from my mouth. Anyway, right. I'd like to firstly commend Rob Ellis of our staff and Tom Morris, who've worked exceedingly hard. They've done a colossal amount of work to get the project this far. The project received planning permission at November's Dartmoor National Park when it was unanimously supported by all the park members. And members are probably wondering, why actually, the additional money is needed. The money is needed to bridge the gap in funding because consultants that were employed underestimated the infrastructure costs, and when it came down to getting contractors for construction, there was a gap. I would urge members to support this. This is an excellent scheme. It will provide 12 superb family homes in a rural setting and also 5 open market homes, which will also be safeguarded for locals, and there will also be a community building. And I would hope that members would support this. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Smurden. Councillor Pannell, would you like to speak next, please?
Yes. Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'd also like to support this recommendation. I think it's a visionary project, and I know that both the officers and particularly the South Brent Community Land Trust have worked very hard on this, and I'd like to pay tribute for the work they've done. I know they are disappointed that following the funding figures provided by the consultants appointed by this council, that there is a shortfall. I understand that we no longer make grants to cover this, but I do know the officers are working to try and find further grant funding to cover this shortfall. The outcome, if they don't get that funding, is that sadly the homes will be more expensive to buy. The repayments will not be covered by universal credit payments, although they are up to, as Councillor Pearce said, up to the normal standard of payments, but they will not be covered by universal credit for people who are on that. And the homes will not be up to the very high eco standards which the group had hoped for. And I'm disappointed at that, and I do hope that our officers can try and find the extra funding that's needed to provide that. I know very well from my own experience that South Brent is a very expensive place for people to buy. And so I'd just like to, with those comments, support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Taylor.
Sorry, I didn't want to. So, I'm sorry, Chairman. I did want to pay tribute to Councillor Smurden and former Councillor Rob Steer for their work in assisting this group.
Thank you very much for that. So, Councillor Taylor, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I came in on the back end of the St Anne's Chapel development, but it is for these affordable houses that is desperately needed in the area. I'm quite pleased to see that the 106 agreement is going to protect these houses against second home buyers, and obviously the sale ones at 60% discount is going to be very useful for the area. And of course the 4 rentable units, which there's very few of them left here, and that they're all going to be protected by so they don't get sold on to any outside people or for second homes. I mean, the development is very attractive. It's landscaping and service roads, and of course the cost of the land was minimal. I don't think it cost anything except for the cost of 2 serviced plots for the landowner. So we're very lucky to be able to get that land. So it needs to be used as quickly as possible. I would support the release of the 106 and 106 and the funding from South Hams. Thank you.
Councillor Brazil, I believe that you wish to speak. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Rose. Yes, you know, 2 wonderful projects, and thank you to everyone that's been involved. It's exactly the sort of thing we would be doing, should be doing as a council. Just a couple of points. First of all, the £360,000 loan. I noticed that that's only being secured against the affordable housing plots. I very much hope that we don't end up with the open market ones and the affordables not quite happening, but maybe that's just me being slightly cynical. One thing I would say, just listening to what Guy was saying, is it does appear that they're going to be looking for even more money. I don't know if someone could clarify that. And finally on that is I do hope that we've used consultants, no doubt at a cost, who have come up with figures that are ludicrously low for preparing the infrastructure, that we don't use those consultants again, because that could have scuppered that scheme. And you know, they're meant to be professional people giving professional advice, and quite frankly, it hasn't been good enough.
Okay, thank you for that. So does anyone else wish to speak? If not, we'll move to the vote with the recommendation as set out on screen. Mr. White, can you do the vote, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. So members for or against recommendations as per the screen. Councillor Abbott.
For.
Councillor Austin.
For.
Councillor Baldry.
For.
Councillor Bastone.
For.
Councillor Birch.
For.
Councillor Brazil.
For.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Foss.
For.
Councillor Hawkins.
For.
Councillor Hodgson.
Sorry, for.
Councillor Holway.
For.
Councillor Hopwood.
For.
Councillor Jackson.
For.
Councillor Long.
For.
Councillor McKay.
For.
Councillor Callaghan.
For.
Councillor Pannell.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce.
For.
Councillor Pringle.
For.
Councillor Reeve.
For.
Councillor Rose.
For.
Councillor Rosemary Rowe.
For.
Councillor Smurden.
For.
Councillor Spencer.
For.
Councillor Sweet.
For.
Councillor Taylor.
For.
And Councillor Thomas.
For.
That motion is therefore declared carried by unanimous vote. Thank you, members.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Daryl. As it is almost 4 o'clock, my kitchen clock says about 8 minutes to 4. I'm going to suggest we take like an 8-minute break and come back again at 4 o'clock for those of us who might wish to take a comfort break. Is that in order, Mr. Molyneux?
That's absolutely fine, Madam Chairman.
Right. But remember, we must leave our iPads, Surface Go, whatever, switched on. Okay, don't log out because you're leaving. But we're just going to take a 5-minute break. Thank you. If you can be back up by 4 o'clock.